Welcome, everyone, to the pre-Week 1 waiver wire edition. We have finally gotten to that point. We have the first NFL professional regular season game taking place Thursday. Hopefully, a lot of offense between the Chiefs and Lions. We are all set. Many of you have probably done your drafts over this past weekend, long weekend, obviously, or are pushing up against the gun here with a few more drafts to come.
My last one's tonight.
There you go.
Tonight.
Jake's
the one that I'm the
the
commissioner of. I'm the biggest proponent of. Don't wait till the absolute last second. We've done it on Labor Day, so I've pushed it to Tuesday because our regular Labor Day weekend draft got pushed because of a Badger game. So
Jake's one of the proponents of rolling the dice. I want to be all done. I've accounted for all of my shares across different leagues, 7 different Chris Olave shares, if you care to know. I accounted for all of that on my Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports. You can look at all the guys that I'm rostering. Again, 15 different leagues. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about the guys you need to pick up ahead of Week 1, starting again Thursday. And I'm looking forward to it. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, the last 8 weeks were just kind of us messing around. Yes. Here's what we're good at now. So glad you tuned in.
Wait a minute. I feel like we're good at the other stuff too that we're doing. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right. Yeah. Okay. You can speak for yourself there. You're good at it, Joe. We'll go for it.
All right. Let's hit the music. Again, welcome everyone to the pre-Week 1 waiver wire edition of the show. Each week moving forward, Jake Letarski and I will be here with you talking waiver wire pickups, and this is our first of 18, 19 shows. I know we do like one pseudo playoff show or at least recap of things. So
yeah,
you
are
do
with the awards and the
first
round mock. Yeah, exactly. The next 4 months. This is the most important podcast you'll listen to all week. You'll hear us say that over and over and over again. We are always great at our waivers because we are preparing diligently for this show. We're not only making our picks, we're double checking everybody else across the industry to either make sure we didn't miss anyone or say, hey, you might be told to pick up this player somewhere, but here's why that's a bad idea. And so we have it all for you. We have it from all angles. We'll do quarterbacks. We'll do super flex options, 2 quarterback leagues, streamers. We'll even stream some defenses every single week, but no kickers.
No kickers, yeah, that's right. Just for those who are tuning in for the first time or listening to a waiver wire show for the first time, typically when we are going over the analysis on these players, we're targeting players under 50% rostered on Yahoo. That's kind of our baseline software function that we're looking for. And for a lot of these, they're a lot lower, right? We're trying not to give you the most obvious names. There's a few guys teetering around the 45% range, and there will be in ensuing weeks because discussion is going to be had about some of these waiver wire guys anyway. We might as well be on top of it, even if they're highly rostered. But just keep in mind, we're shooting
exactly.
under 50%
there's
rostered.
A lot of the show this week and a lot of our selections for the waiver wire picks are players that have a specific circumstance change or a good matchup or something that led to that. But when I was doing the show and I was kind of sorting the players by percent rostered on Yahoo, which is kind of our baseline, we like to keep it under 50% if possible. There are a lot of guys in the 41 to 49% range that I think should probably be rostered, and they almost definitely are in most 12, any 14, any 16 team leagues. But for some reason they aren't. And we'll kind of quick hit a couple of those, but we're going to try to focus, at least this week, on the guys that have a specific circumstance change, and they might be more available in your leagues.
All right. Well, we literally have breaking news at the moment. Tony Baker messages us here saying Kelce hurt his knee at practice. So I'm going to continue outlining things right now, Jake, while you do your Twitter sleuthing and see if we know anything more about Travis Kelce.
Hyperextended his knee at practice. His status for Thursday night's opener is uncertain.
Wow.
All right. So, yeah, we get breaking news right off the top here. I'm going to go ahead and look up Kelce's backups by the time we go to tight ends.
Yeah,
but I don't even think
spoiler,
that's matter
you have to look him up because I can't name it off the top of my head. All right, so we were going to say there was very little news entering Week 1. Obviously, the game taking place Thursday between the Lions and Chiefs had a bit more at stake with Kadarius Toney and everything else. This Travis Kelce dynamic changes just about everything with the Chiefs offense, and obviously, as we're doing this podcast live, we don't know the severity of what that means if you're drafting Travis Kelce or if you're in Jake's draft in position, have waited till today. I guess you're avoiding taking a top 4 or 5 overall selection. The same was happening with Cooper.
Mine's a super flex tonight, though. So Kelce would have been probably in the first round, but late first round. Yeah. Now we'll have to see. We'll have to see what's going on there. I was very close to taking Kelce 3 overall over Christian McCaffrey in the league, but I decided to take McCaffrey Dodged a bullet there. Stake
Man,
League's the only league that I have Kelce in, so who knows? With that, my Kelce Jefferson start, maybe I'll be breaking my awesome Stake League streak, but I don't know. I'll be on the waiver wire all season long, and we'll see what happens.
we will keep you guys updated throughout the show. Obviously, this is massive news and will matter when it comes to a waiver wire perspective. But for a lot of people, you've either already drafted or will be going into your drafts over the next 2 days with this knowledge in hand, and it will be easier to kind of transition and understand what you want to do. So, besides this massive breaking news that happened just moments ago, not a lot did occur over the past long weekend and entering practice. You had Jackson Smith-Njigba, first round receiver for the Seahawks, was practicing Monday with that wrist injury. If you recall, the Seahawks have been kind of coy about what his status would be, that he might be ready for week 1. We'll see how much he actually plays. Remember, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are still healthy, obviously, so the Seahawks passing attack would likely still revolve around those two anyway, even if Smith-Njigba is healthy. This doesn't move much of a needle for me. I have drafted Smith-Njigba over the past couple of weeks in, I think, 2 different leagues, and I was doing with the context in week 8 or week 9, if Lockett or Metcalf were to get injured, we're talking about a wide receiver 2 or even low-end wide receiver 1 on your team. But I'm planning for week 9, week 8. This doesn't impact things for me too much. Do you have much shares of JSN?
Of JSN, I actually have 0 so far.
Okay. Yeah, I like I said, I probably have 2.
Yeah, I was thinking about maybe grabbing some in Dynasty. He only went for like $3 in our keeper auction. But you only keep 2 players though, so you'd have to have a pretty good season to even be keepable at that price. So yeah, I don't have any so far. I don't like, I despite recent trends, you know me, I'm generally rookie averse. And when the guy breaks his hand and he's already on a team with Lockett and Metcalf, with who I think is a subpar quarterback to begin with, there's just not a lot of attraction in redraft for me. But there is some in keeper.
No, I'm with you on that word. I think JSN's talent is insane, and we saw it last year with Ohio State. But it's the NFL, right? I guess we didn't even see it last year; it was the year before that. But either way, he was one of the top dynasty prospects for a number of months, along with Bijan Robinson, and it felt like towards the end of the combine process did he tail off only slightly. Mm-hmm. I'm trusting what a lot of us, and myself included, have identified with a really good receiver. It's just not the great situation for him at the moment. Amon-Ra St. Brown was not listed on the injury report. He was dealing with an ankle injury. Of course, they play Thursday. That's great news if you're drafting St. Brown among the top 16 picks. I was seeing him go as high as 5, like in the Beat Joe Bartel online championship with the NFFC draft. Obviously, high buy-ins, and I was interested with that choice. And I've also seen Amon-Ra St. Brown drop to the middle second round. Like if you were in my friends and family league, I was drafting on ESPN last night. So obviously the scoring system matters the most with that. I don't have many shares of St. Brown. I'm totally believing that he could be a first-round caliber player next year. I also think he's pretty capped out in terms of what could happen. Maybe the touchdown regression slides a different way. But touchdowns are always really finicky and really tricky, so I'm not convinced in either direction. And it's great that he's playing. That's the big news in that regard. The other one,
a lot of news today, none of this stuff really is moving the needle much for me. Tuesday, of course, in the week's a little early to talk about these injuries. We're talking about stuff that happened over Labor Day weekend here. But remember, tomorrow, Wednesday, is when teams actually have to fill out their practice reports. So we'll find if they're limited or full participants or not practicing at all. And that kind of news will get a better read throughout the course of the week here. And of course, that changes the waiver wire, a little bit. So to your first come, first serve on Thursday, we got an article on the RotoWire website for that. But yeah, there's a lot of bullet points today, that we can keep going through, and I'll let you keep going through them.
Yeah, Joe Burrow is currently listed as day-to-day with that calf injury. That's interesting because he dealt with the calf injury at the beginning of training camp. I want to say it's like August 8th. And
there's a big scare with Burrow, remember?
Say that again?
Yeah, we had a big scare with Burrow a month ago, right?
We had a big scare with a few of these guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So, and now it's looking like a lot of these guys will play, but of course tomorrow's practice report will tell all.
I don't know if anyone was concerned Burrow wouldn't play, but that he's still dealing with the ramifications potentially, that he's listed as day-to-day, that he won't be completely removed of the injury it's worth noting because Jamar Chase is the number 2, pretty much consensus number 2 overall pick. T. Higgins is going within the top 24. You still have Joe Mixon as a 4th or 5th round guy. I mean, there's a lot just assuming that Joe Burrow is going to be healthy and that he isn't quite yet entering the year. Makes me concerned of the quarterbacks, in that tier is Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. Burrow has safely slid below all of those guys for me, but I would still take Burrow over Deshaun Watson. It's really Trevor Lawrence or Burrow that ends up being the decision, but most people already make it for me. They'll be taking Burrow, and why not? Because if he is healthy, he's got 45% 5 touchdown upside. I know that sounds like a preposterous number, but I mean, the Bengals offense could be pretty insane.
Yeah, it could be a buy low opportunity. I mean, Burrow was a $15 player in my most recent auction, whereas, Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen were all 25 plus here. So there's definitely a tier drop off there. I think he went for a similar price to Trevor Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Taysom Hill was listed as a quarterback on the Saints depth chart, not tight end. And I think that's worth pointing out because they brought back Jimmy Graham from retirement. Raise your hand if you remember Jimmy Graham was actually still in the NFL over the past 3 or 4 months. They acquired Foster Moreau, who had that. I don't think it was a scare. I think he did have cancer and was able to get cleared of that over this past offseason from the Raiders. That matters because Derek Carr comes over from the Raiders too. And they still have Juwan Johnson, who, spoiler, we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show too. So that Taysom Hill's listed as a quarterback doesn't matter too much for me. I think it's just they have so many guys already there that, you could list him as whatever position. He'll play what fits for that Saints offense. That was Dennis Allen.
Yeah,
still did Taysom Hill things last year. It wasn't just Sean Payton. So I'm not I don't convinced the designation matters.
That's just a situation that I've chose to ignore. I guess if you could put it in the best way, I have zero exposure. I'm not interested in playing the game of how he's going to be used on a week-to-week basis. It's way too volatile for me. Maybe you can stomach it in best ball, but zero exposure in season long and won't be getting any tonight either.
Yeah, the only bit of news I think that really matters for the next 24 hours or at least 48 hours, that's not Travis Kelce. And again, we'll keep you updated when we know more. Jerry Jeudy did some light work on the sidelines. Obviously has that hamstring injury. Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like he's not going to be ready for week 1. And the Broncos have been really coy about his designation. Of course, we'll find out what his status is come Wednesday when they have the first injury reports. But that's a big one to me.
And a little teaser is this will tie into one of our recommended waiver wire pickups here. That's only about 36% rostered in Yahoo. So that's actually one of my top waiver wire recommendations, for the week overall. I mean, I guess for when you take the season-long outlook into account, which, we'll get to that when we start discussing some of these guys.
Yeah, I have a few shares of Cortland Sutton that I got over the past weekend, and I feel very confident that even if he's the lesser guy out of that equation, Jeudy and Sutton, and most thought he would be when Jeudy was healthy, he was going as the 3rd or 4th round pick, Sutton's going to be okay. If the Broncos offense looks even remotely competent.
I'm weirdly worried about Sutton. He's one of my zero exposure guys, actually. I've seen and read from multiple sources independent from each other that he's not quite the same after the knee injury. And maybe, not quite the same is still a valuable player here, but, just general uncertainty about Russell Wilson, and we'll see if he can come back.
The other bit of news from the Chiefs that came yesterday was Kadarius Toney was limited to practice Monday. That tracks because he was supposed to be possibly ready for week 1. Again, he got injured at the beginning of training camp. Justin Watson, really a blocking specialist and a big body target, has been projected to play more than rookie Rashee Rice, who Jake, I like a lot. And I felt like training camp standout and preseason standout Justin Ross, who was a Clemson target for many years and has taken a couple of years now to get healthy and get back into the swing of things. I feel very confident that either Rashee Rice or Justin Ross are going to be a thing this season, and it's not Justin Watson.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a little bit if we're going to pretend like Justin Watson's going to be in the field taking critical snaps.
Yeah, I'm definitely less confident about that suddenly happening in week 1. Of course, you got the regular rookie wide receiver pain here, and I mean, you've seen how guys like Sky Moore and guys like Mecole Hardman were really non-factors for the Chiefs their rookie year here, and of course, different player. Too small of a sample size to just blame it on that factor here. But somebody Thursday night is going to catch some passes here.
Especially if Kelce's not playing.
Yeah, which we presume Kelce's not. Schefter said Schefter, what have you, but he did say he hyperextended his knee there. And, like you said, Kadarius Toney is banged up but looking good. Richie James, which I don't know how he's going to factor in the mix, questionable status there. I mean, there's a very good chance that Mahomes take the field with MVS and Sky Moore as his 1 and 2 receiving options with, they might run the backs a little more, I could see Edwards-Helaire lining up in the slot.
Jerick McKinnon was so involved as a pass catcher too.
As well. Yeah, so this is going to be it'll be an interesting DFS showdown slate. I don't think I might consider Sky Moore, picking someone like him up, but to pick him up and stream him week 1, that's getting pretty tough. And none of those guys, Watson, Rice, I'm not touching week 1.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Philly Mike OG has mentioned Marvin Mims as a DK week 1 starter. I think there's actually a really intriguing DK week 1 lineup with a few of our guys. With a few of our guys on this list. Like I think actually week 1 DFS lineup will feature a few of them, if not 2 or 3 because
The
it looks
thirst
kind of
for
weird.
DraftKings salaries. I mean, these things come out 2, 3, 4 weeks before the season, right? So you've getting in on these contests that aren't filled yet. You get all these opportunities based on circumstantial changes, within the offense, and then you'd like to think probably not huge, but there's got to be a little bit of dead weight in these contests due to injuries. If you're setting a lineup with Jonathan Taylor or something, for example, not 100% are taking him out. So there's definitely DFS opportunity in week 1.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, let's dive into the pre-week 1 quarterbacks to pick up. Before we do so, a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. All right, we're back. Obviously, for the video audience, we take a little break. Audio audience, you got some commercials in between there. It's the quarterbacks though that are worth discussing. Again, for context, people who are just coming into the show, we've got a lot of live watchers right now. We are trying to target players under 50% rostered on Yahoo. We're not factoring in Superflex per se. There's like a separate category or tier of quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So the guys we'll recommend first are really redraft 12-team kind of league players where maybe they're picked up, maybe they're not, but certainly ones you could stream week in and week out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We'll hit the guys that are again. There are a few guys on that list that might not have the greatest week 1 matchups, but are less than 50% rostered and should be more greatly rostered in our collective opinion. Based on what we've discussed all year leading up to this point. And then we've got some good week 1 matchups and of course some 2 quarterback leagues stuff to look at. So let's take it away with number 1.
All right, so it's Derek Carr going against the Titans defense, and obviously I have been in on the Saints this season. I think they have a chance to win the NFC South. Actually, I think they're the favorites in my mind and better betting odds than what you're getting currently. I know it's not a great matchup, and the Titans pass rushers should be healthy relative to last year when it felt like 6 or 7 starters were gone by the end of the season. I trust in that offense, and I trust in Derek Carr. I also think the slow tempo of things will benefit if you're just accumulating passing yards or whatever else for Derek Carr. So he might not be quarterback 14 or 13 fantasy-wise, but he's going to be right around there, even if the Titans defense, and I think will, be better this season.
Yeah, I saw him left out in a couple of 12-team drafts that I've done recently, and I was a little bit surprised by that. And of course, I'll be if I'm leaving him out, it's because I got one of the top 3 quarterbacks, and I'm not wasting a roster spot on a backup when I can stream, that individual week here. But anyway, yeah. So Derek Carr was only 40% rostered on Yahoo. Again, the Tennessee matchup. It's good that he's at home, I suppose, for the opener, and but the matchup isn't necessarily anything to write home about. This is just a recommendation solely based on the fact that we think he is going to have a better season than where he is ranked, and he will be a very useful streamer at some points or another. And you can go get him now if there's dead weight on.
I don't know if it's my camera or if it's Jake's or whatever else, but yeah, I'm going to keep talking it through and just making sure if we are live right now, and if it is me that is kicking it off with the internet here, that it's going to be a scenario where Derek Carr could be successful. So I'm right on board with that from a fantasy perspective. The next guy that I think is worth targeting, worth picking up right now is Jordan Love, and maybe it's the Packers bias in us, and I know Jake was all in on this too. Bears defense isn't great. I know they signed a few linebackers this offseason, got better front 7 players, but it was still a defense that was bottom 3rd overall, a young secondary. Now, Jordan Love also obviously a young player too in his own right, starting his first career NFL game. But you need to understand that Jordan Love is going to be in a spot, especially with Matt LaFleur calling plays, to make him be successful. And we saw it a lot during the preseason, those bootlegs on a number of occasions, whether it's dumping down to Luke Musgrave or whatever else. It's going to be a big deal where Jordan Love, I think, is successful. And I was just telling the audience, Jake, that I think Jordan Love is one of the better pickups as well, alongside Derek Carr.
Yeah, apologies there to the audience out there. These dang corporate computers force you to restart and download all these extra programs that nobody actually needs on here. But, that's another bone to pick. No, Jordan Love at the Bears. This is another one that's not necessarily the greatest matchup on paper. It's a road matchup. At least, weather obviously isn't going to be a real huge factor in Chicago this time of year yet. So it's nice to get that road matchup out of the way. Not that it matters if you're the Packers. But in any case, the Bears have an improving defense. I don't think it's a playoff defense, as we both noted in our in our over-under win total show a week ago. But like Derek Carr, this is one where Love is only 30% rostered. We are both confident the Packers are going to sneak up on on some people this year, even if it's a bit of a homer pick. But the new guard and the talent around him seems to be good enough that Jordan Love should definitely be worth a roster spot in most leagues. Even if you are hanging on to a Mahomes or an Allen or a Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
I could still see rostering a guy like Love to keep him out of the hands of another owner that might need him a lot more.
I was saying before you came on that I just think Matt LaFleur is going to put Love in a spot to be successful. A lot of those
Yep.
bootleg plays, a lot of play action stuff
Hmm.
where he can make the reads pretty confidently. I'm just not. I mean, unless the Bears are bringing pressure 24/7, I'm not convinced they're going to pose much of a threat. And maybe the Bears will. I mean, you think back to Love's start with the Chiefs a while ago, 2 years ago at this point. I mean, the Chiefs just blitzed him for 3 quarters onward once they realized he couldn't recognize it. The Bears might do that, but typically in Week 1, teams are still trying to put out. I don't want to call phony plays, but you're trying to have the percentages on defensive calls and whatever else, and you don't want to be maxed out. So I don't, even if they do think Love can't succeed against the blitz, they're not calling it the whole time. It's just not what you're
Hmm.
doing week 1. That's not typically what NFL defenses tend to do. So I'm right there with you. You're playing Carr over Love, right? Though that's that if you're picking one of these between one of these two options.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you had to pick one quarterback, you're going with the established guy, really.
Yeah, okay, that's I agree with you too. The
And
other
the
one,
one that's at home too, that plays a role.
yes, the other one, and this goes back to Philly Mike OG and talking about the Week 1 DraftKings lineup. It's Sam Howell going against what everyone thinks is going to be the Caleb Williams-led Cardinals next season, right? Because the Cardinals are tanking to a point that Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune, it's going to be Dobbs this week, but we'll see in future weeks is starting. I really think Sam Howell's not too bad. Actually, I recall on this very same podcast, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, week 17 or 18, when Howell was starting against the Cowboys. If you have to do it, he's going to be able to run the ball. You can make it. And Howell ended up scoring 20 fantasy points. So now with hopefully Terry McLaurin healthy, we'll have to see what his stats is.
Yep.
But a Commanders offense overall, that's, I think, pretty good, and a defense that should be able to capitalize in a very juicy matchup. Sam Howell is actually a really, really intriguing DFS Week 1 play for me. And if you must stream already in Week 1, I don't know why you need to. I don't mind him too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like here about this whole situation. They don't have a whole lot to lose. I think they'll be better than they were in the past. Another year in for Sam Howell with the system, and now he knows that he is the guy. That's all good. And of course, McLaurin possibly being out with the turf toe. We'll see. I'm worried about Scary Terry. I know that he's going to play all year, but the only real way to fix this injury is to sit, which isn't going to happen. So it's going to be a thing all year. Don't forget, these guys have Logan Thomas, who was at one point a fantasy thing here, but he's also dealing with the calf injury. Overall, though, again, you're at home and you're going against a tanking team. He's another player that I think will be set up to succeed. I am optimistic about him rest of season. I'm still probably playing Carr or Love if I have to stream someone this year. But out of the three quarterbacks we've discussed now, Howell is definitely the best matchup out of any of those.
Yeah, you have it listed. I'm dropping Trey Lance in your leagues that had drafted Lance early on. Yeah, you could draft him confidently.
Yeah,
Drop him, I should say.
I'll take the L on that. Gardner Minshew's another one. Obviously, Richardson won the job, but if these are all guys that went in fishbowl, if that makes any difference. So I wanted to throw that out there. And if you're in a 10-team league, you probably consider dropping Kyler Murray.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't have injured reserve spots. I mean, that's the key part of this.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
do have an
exactly.
injured reserve, you can kind of slot him there. But I would agree with you. Likely you're able to pick him up as he gets closer to returning. Because you'll have an idea. You have a month lead up. You'll have an idea of when Kyler might be ready for the Cardinals,
Yep.
who, again, might be very interested in Caleb Williams and don't care if Kyler Murray plays at all this year. We'll have to kind of see.
And don't they get out
how
of what does it work? They get an extra year back on the contract or some.
I saw a
there's
report that they
kind of
owed money, like $80 million if Kyler Murray can't pass the physical. So it actually behoove the Cardinals to have Kyler Murray out there. I could be wrong. I was not paying attention to too much NFL news this weekend. So
Yeah,
that just
I don't know. My
popped by
brother
the
told me
radar.
that in passing, and I was like, I didn't even bother to check it out. I thought maybe you did. Anyway,
No,
we can move.
I'm
on
a
from
dad
that
now. I'm just
situation.
really lazy with a lot of this stuff. I'm sorry, unfortunately, Jake.
Yeah, hey, it's all good. That's why I got the outline for you.
From a 2 quarterback league perspective, I'm actually surprised that at least on Yahoo, Desmond Ritter is only rostered in 4% of leagues. I get it. A lot of people are lower on his talent, and the Falcons' offense as a whole, from a passing perspective, doesn't look all that great. But Ritter, like the bar that Mariota set last year was really low, like my ankle kind of level low. You should be able to jump over that, and even if you think Ritter is bad, I think he can clear that Mariota bar. I know Mariota wasn't really fantasy relevant, especially in 12-team leagues, but in Superflex, in a pinch, you could have had to use Mariota. I think the same could be for Ritter too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's the same. And like all of these guys, we're jumping in with a pretty healthy roster here, and I think there are reasonable weapons on this, Atlanta team. I just got another share of Kyle Pitts this past weekend. The only real injury on that offense is Cordero Patterson, and part of it's the matchup. If anyone's going to contend, I mean, not that the Panthers need Caleb Williams, necessarily here, but if anyone's going to contend, we suggested the Panthers in our over/under win show as one of the potential worst, contending for the first round draft pick there with the Cardinals. So, the matchup should be good. And, that's why I picked Ritter as a streamer two quarterback league option, because I'm doing a 12-team Superflex tonight, and Ritter's definitely going to be on the fringe of whether he's drafted or not.
Okay, yeah. Are you considering the Cardinals situation all again in Superflex? Because that's where the only place I could see matter. I think it's Dobbs that we at least have listed right now as the week 1 starter for the Cardinals, but I thought there was room for Clayton Tune to potentially start. It doesn't. I mean, this is QB 32 of 32.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't really recommend them starting in Superflex, but I do understand why someone would want to roster them.
Yeah, there's definitely drop offs, or there's a 1% bit there, and there's a big drop off. But yeah, again, two quarterback leagues that drafted far long ago, where you need someone that's a starter. I'll probably bid on Josh Dobbs in our dynasty league, because guess what? I don't have anyone to back up Dak Prescott, and everyone hoards quarterbacks in that league. So
yeah, you can trade with me. I got a few for you.
All right. Okay. We'll talk about that off air.
All right. Before we get to the running backs and obviously discussing more about Travis Kelce, much to the chagrin of Rushman, who really needs us to be discussing that now, let's get a word from our sponsors, Rival Fantasy. If you're looking for a place to play head-to-head fantasy football games without the huge tournaments, salary caps, or complicated game types, then Rival Fantasy is where you want to play this NFL season. From a twist on a classic game with Fantasy Bingo, where players generate a lineup to complete achievements and get bingo, to head-to-head fantasy challenges where you pick which of two players will score more fantasy points than the other, this is the best version of fantasy sports. For the 2023 NFL season, Rival Fantasy is offering users a $200 deposit match plus $25 first play voucher. Rival Fantasy is so confident you'll love the experience. They're giving you money to play out of the gate. Experience the future of fantasy sports on Rival Fantasy and become a rival today. All right, so if it wasn't the Travis Kelce news, which again, we don't have a lot to go off at this time. It sounds like Travis Kelce is uncertain for Thursday's Week 1 match against the Lions.
Apparently, we got to mention it every 5 minutes. So
it's every 3 seconds for Rushman. Otherwise, he is going to lose his mind. Right, and we're there for you, Rushman. Don't you worry. We are there to help
but anyway,
you out.
Kelce hyperextended his knee, looking pretty iffy for Thursday, in case you're just tuning in with us now.
And we're going to talk about the tight ends later, so maybe I don't feel like it's worth mentioning who to pick up now. I guess I'll just say it, since we are mentioning Travis Kelce, that I'm not confident there is a guy I want to pick up. Like, that's the other part of this with the Chiefs offense.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. I mean,
and what's a hyperextended knee? Now, listen, I always say I fell a few classes short of my med school degree here, but hyperextended knee 4 to 6 is what we kind of see in the past. That seem about right? Yeah, unless you're Giannis in the finals, then you come back after a game and are a stud. But, again, I guess that can mean a whole lot of things. Yeah, that can mean a whole lot of things. So let's get to running backs, though. We'll hit Kelce 3 more times.
Yeah. Again, we'll talk about tight ends in a little while. We can factor in Noah Graham, what else that means too. Prior to Travis Kelce, the big news was that Jonathan Taylor was placed on the PUP list. And what does that mean for the Colts backfield situation? We have went on air now the past 2 weeks and said, I don't know. And I'm going to go here again and say, I'm not positive. I think the Colts have listed Deon Jackson as the starter. But you can list whoever you want as the starter, and then it just depends on what the snap count looks like and situationally how they're going to operate. I think most people are assuming the Colts will struggle. The offense might not look great in week 1, and by default, Deon Jackson is going to see the most playing time because he's the optimal pass catcher of that group. But there is Zach Moss, who I don't know. I mean, his status is still TBD on whether or not he'll be ready for week 1's contest, and he could be a pass catcher too. There's a lot of ambiguity about what the Colts backfield looks like.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason I picked Deon Jackson as a guy I wanted wanted to be our cover boy and possibly the best overall pickup this week, at least if you're talking 1 week options. So I guess there's a lot of reasons here. One, Zach Moss, remember he broke his arm in the was it a jet ski accident? Am I remembering him correctly?
Yeah. We had mentioned that. How weird does a jet ski accident have to happen for the broken arm thing? But yes, that happened during the offseason.
So that happens. Apparently he's progressing well and still TBD for week 1. Again, official injury reports are going to happen tomorrow, and we're going to have a better guess on things. And in theory, I would think Deon Jackson would be more of the early down, while Zach Moss is the pass catching back. We'll of course see how that goes, and then of course Evan Hall is also around here. Really, that means Deon Jackson and Evan Hall are the only active, healthy backs, and Jackson is listed as the week 1 starter here. So we know for week 1 things are going to be good. I mean, I would say at least 15, 20 touches for Deon Jackson, minimum there. And of course, Moss coming back can change that a little bit. But even then, 15, 20 meaningful offensive plays for Deon Jackson here. Here's the thing. He has had success in this league in the past, with this team in the past, against this opponent in the past. I mean, last year against Jacksonville, week 5, he had 12 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground. But guess what? Also caught 10 passes for 79 yards. Now, granted, the Indianapolis quarterback was different. The wide receivers were banged up to no end and injured. So, there
and
was
less
a door
time to scheme it too, right? I mean,
Exactly.
they've known Jonathan Taylor's not going to play now for a fair minute.
Mm-hmm.
You should have an idea of what you want to do offensively for multiple weeks.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have a good matchup against the Jags, but I mean, he also had a pretty solid game, at Denver and at Houston in Week 18 last season. So he can have good fantasy games. He has an opponent he's done it against before. He has arguably, I don't know if it's better circumstances because the rookie quarterback, we don't really know what we're going to get. Although we're probably confident, in Anthony Richardson over the ghost of Matt Ryan, the ghost of Phillip Rivers, whatever whatever we have here with Indianapolis. But I mean, there are just so many factors that go into Deon Jackson having a reasonable week this week. I'm to the point where I got him for $1 at the end of the auction last night. I think everyone fell asleep when they got down to dollar days, and or last night, 2 nights ago. But in any case, I'm starting to have an actual dilemma between him and Hollywood Brown and
Okay.
And let's see, who else? What did I have? David Montgomery, even. I'm probably just going to start my guys, but
you're really high in the. Okay.
But Deon Jackson sneaks in there he could be good, especially if it's full PPR. We've seen his pass catching prowess before, and of course that has to assume that Zach Moss doesn't play either.
Yeah, and a user actually asked a really good question that I think is important to this. Could Deon be a 3-down back if Moss is out? Because Evan Hull, the rookie running back on their depth chart right now, is just nowhere near ready. From everything I've seen, I think Evan Hull is actually going to have an impact and maybe take the Joshua Kelly role for the Chargers where he gets 6 or 7 carries. You're having Deon Jackson out there for 65% of the snaps. He's being the pass catcher. He's still getting some carry opportunities. He's not Austin Eckler. I want to be clear in this analogy. But I could absolutely see Evan Hall still being around, and that's what makes me hesitant about Deon Jackson. And if the game script goes differently, I know everyone, I would imagine, besides the Cardinals, the Colts are probably the most lopsided of the week 1 opponents relative to their facing. But if the Colts are able to keep it close, I think you're having more running, and that hurts Deon Jackson, who I think will be involved in most fantasy relevant as a pass catcher. So I see
Deon as a 3-down back mostly, with Hull as more of a change of pace once in a while. Maybe we'll do 1 or 2 Hull series off to the side, means 5 or 6 carries. But again, that's just, I don't know. That's just me guessing based on how they've distributed things in the past. I don't have any source or anything that's going to be a real good insight into that. We're just going to have
if you have a top waiver wire spot, you're not using that on Deon Jackson?
Depends what my running back situation is.
Okay.
It really does. If you use the 0 RB strategy, I could see blowing it on Deon Jackson right now because you've got 5 weeks without Taylor. And who knows if that situation's ever going to repair itself when it comes back, or when Taylor is actually healthy. Did the Colts make up another injury and throw him on IR? Can they actually trade him? Does he just sit out disgruntled? Do they actually make up? I think you're getting a decent 5 weeks out of Deon Jackson, and you at least have to consider it depending on where we're going. I mean, it's a 15 to, I know this is a big range here because there's a lot of leagues, but probably a $15 to $25 fab bid.
Historically, we've had the most relevant guys on waivers after week 1. So I think last year's Jamal Williams for a lot of people, a couple of years before that was Justin Jefferson. That made it to like week 3. But like there has been guys. I want to save my top waiver wire pick if I have one of those for after week 1. And I'm not going to spend it on Deon Jackson. And from a budget perspective, let's just save $100 fab budget. I don't think I'm going much higher than 8 or 9. Like I don't want to go above 10%. I am worried this offense is bad. I'm also worried that there's going to be a lot of guys involved. And as soon as week 2, if Zach Moss is healthy, let's just say he doesn't play week 1, but week 2, that complicates things further. I don't want to get involved with it with Deon Jackson. And he's less interesting to me than I guess what you are, which is fine.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, it's a little bit, but not by much. Maybe you're talking me off the ledge, and I'm a little bit hyped for the first waiver wire show of the season here.
That's what it is.
Yes. That could be it too, but I don't know. It seems like great circumstances for Deon Jackson. On the flip side, if he goes out and does what he did against Jacksonville last year, then suddenly he's a $25 fab bid next week, which may or may not be prudent, but that's what you're going to have to pay to get him.
No, that's fair. One guy that just sneaks under the threshold, I think is really interesting and worth discussing either way, is Devon Achane, who is rostered at 49% now in Yahoo leagues. Again, we're trying to go under 50%. Being pre-week 1 show, there's not as many interesting running backs per se. He obviously has that shoulder injury, and you have Jeff Wilson now in injured reserve for the Dolphins. And not that, he's going to return in 4 weeks injured reserve, but we might expect him back this season, says Mike McDaniels, in regards to Jeff Wilson on the injured reserve. That's important because Raheem Mostert's your starter. And then it's like Salvon Ahmed, and that's it. If and when Mostert gets hurt, it seems like that's been his career for the most part, Achane walks into a very, very great spot with an offense that we know is electric. But I'm concerned he actually can't do the totality of the workload the Dolphins would need. Like if that scenario where Mostert were to get injured, it doesn't mean Achane benefits. It just means overall things look kind of murky for the Dolphins.
Then suddenly it becomes let's go out and sign Kareem Hunt situation, or
Leonard Fournette.
Or something along those lines, which what I could see. But right now, 49% fits our threshold. A lot of people have been taking him. He was a $3 player in our auction this weekend. That does have a keeper component too, so it's a very low risk, potentially high reward there for Achane. Right now he's a backup, so I don't even against the Chargers, I expect there to be a pretty decent amount of points scored in this game with 2 good offenses. No doubt about that. But he's one that you pick up with more of a long-term upside situation here. And I've seen reports of Salvon Ahmed be in the mix as well. He's also day-to-day himself with a neck injury, so I'm not too concerned about that necessarily. I'm more concerned about what happens when Jeff Wilson comes back, because Achane was 3rd on the depth chart behind Mostert and Wilson here. So there's no doubt about that. I don't know if this is just typical rookie treatment or if he really isn't picking up things the way that the coach and offensive coordinators and staff has hoped he'd pick things up, man. So I was actually lowering my interest in him, and then of course the Wilson IR move came, and it's coming back up here. So he should be rostered just because of what he can be, not someone you go ahead and start or even flex this week.
It's a speculative ad, and I think that same process applies for Jaylen Warren, who's at 49% roster, obviously the backup to Najee Harris, and if things were to go badly for Harris again, very clear starter for the Steelers. Tank Bigsby, same, even though I have a lot of Travis Etienne. Bigsby's going to have a role right away, too, for the Jaguars, and could even be more prominent if Etienne were to get injured or have that foot injury pop up again.
Yeah, no, exactly. So there's a bunch of other guys here that are surprisingly less than 50% that I've seen taken in most of my leagues. But, as long as we're rolling, Jaylen Warren, 49%, Tank Bigsby's 48%. Deontay Foreman, a potential quality backup, is only 30%, although I know there's some Roschon Johnson believers out there, specifically in this chat. Devin Singletary, 26%.
I'm not a believer. Hold on. I'm not a believer. I'm just like...
I say in this chat. There's some...
yeah.
I forget the name of the guy, but he always brings up Roschon Johnson every single chat. I wasn't talking about you, Joe. It was something on the side here, because we do watch the comments, guys, and try to interact the best we can. Yeah. It helps when they have something to do with what we're talking about on the show-wise, but we'll still try to get you anyway. Kendra Miller at 19%, by the way. I think he was a decent... especially with Kamara out, of course you got Jamal Williams there. Is he suddenly the every down back? I don't quite see that. So I think Kendre Miller gets a chance early and maybe an opportunity to do more. So there's a low risk, high upside pick. And I know you were in on Gus Edwards at 17%.
Yeah.
Now it's looking like J.K. Dobbins might be healthy actually, which probably lowers the stock of Edwards just a little bit. But
It was the same concept.
these are all decent running backs that can be had or can be rostered if you have any dead weight. If you drafted any of the quarterbacks that we discussed, or
Or how
I
about
put some
Kareem
drops
Hunt or
down.
Leonard Fournette right now? I have a few Fournette shares from late July. I'm not that I'm dropping any of these. Like, I would drop Fournette for Gus Edwards if he was available in those leagues.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of these, like 45 or 50% rostered, you're talking like 10-team leagues where it'd be a little bit tricky. Then
I'd certainly drop Fournette or Hunt if Tank Bigsby was out there. I mean, ETN takes a whole lot of hits, right?
You
never. I think Najee Harris is healthy, so I'd actually probably rank Bigsby over Jalen Warren, even though Warren's still a little bit slightly higher rostered. I guess I'm less interested in Foreman and Singletary because I don't expect the run games to be crazy there. But I would Kendre Miller too. I'd probably pick him up over some of those free agents.
Yeah, and actually, the TTV here in chat makes a really good point. And someone I want to talk about, and I'm glad that you had on the sheet, is it time to mention the 2% rostered number one running back on Yahoo, which is Sean Tucker. And obviously he's making a bit of a ploy that Rachaad White, who is the actual number one running back for the Buccaneers, might not be all that effective. Of course, there's been rumors throughout all of training camp that Chase Edmonds might be involved too. The Cardinals running back now, Buccaneers, they signed this offseason. Sean Tucker, when healthy, this is not a debate in my mind, Jake. When healthy, Sean Tucker is the best running back on that team. It just matters if the Buccaneers will get an opportunity to run. And that's the biggest differential for me is the downgrade from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, even 75-year-old Tom Brady, like he was last year, is pretty substantial. And I anticipate they're going to have to pass a lot more, which is really where the value of number one running back Rachaad White comes into play.
Yeah, I only had one Rachaad White this year, and the more and more I analyze the situation, I think it's going to be a mess of a committee too, because you have Chase Edmonds getting a role too, and then you have Sean Tucker getting a role. You could possibly have a 3 running back committee on one of the on a bottom 5 team in the league. And what does any one of those backs get you? It gives you a desperation flex any week at a given point. Now, maybe Sean Tucker comes out and changes all of this and suddenly is one of this year's big game changers. He could be in at 2% if you have dead weight on your roster. It's certainly worth taking that risk, especially in a in a 16-team league or something like that where he should be taken. But I still see him as guys in the similar boat as guys. I mean, is he really all that much more valuable than like a Ty Chandler or Roschon Johnson who we talked about, or
I like Tucker more than Ty Chandler for what it's worth.
Or
although
Jerome
you're right,
Ford or Chase Brown, we're talking about all these
those
guys.
Those guys are just backups, true backups. I think Sean Tucker is going to have a role right away, but it's a lot like what I think Evan Hull is going to be for the Colts. Although you could say which offense is better, Buccaneers or Colts offense. I don't know. Actually, it's kind of a toss-up. We are going to have a talk about Sean Tucker next week because he's going to be somebody that gets surprisingly 10 carries for 56 yards, and we'll have 3 other running backs we like more. And we'll say, hey, go ahead and pick up Tucker for $4 or $5. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that throughout the rest of the season ends up being more valuable because as the Buccaneers continue to stink more and more, Tucker should get more and more opportunity. But I just think week one, I'm not convinced, especially when he hit. The reason that you or a lot of other people, not you, Jake, but the listeners haven't heard of Sean Tucker, is he had some sort of not undiagnosed, but there was a heart condition that he was dealing with and then got finally cleared a week into training camp. That always makes me just a little bit nervous. And when
Must
you're
have
a
got
young
the vaccine, right? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I
have no idea, Jake.
Not
I have no idea.
Not Chris
That's a different podcast. But that's part of this too. They had noticed that, or they had picked it up after, during the combine. So it's something dating back to his time at Syracuse. Just for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, okay,
that's why you haven't heard of Sean Tucker too.
I had one. I mean, we're already doing pretty solid on time here, but one more running back I just wanted to quick touch on. Miles Sanders has that groin injury, right? He's pretty confident he's going to be ready for Week 1 against the Falcons, who did decent, not exceptional defense here. Chuba Hubbard's only 17% here. Of course, Raheem Blackshear is also in there, but Chuba Hubbard had been a pretty effective waiver wire pickup over the past couple years when McCaffrey was down, for example, and I think that could be the case again if Miles Sanders ends up missing any time. If he doesn't miss Week 1, Miles Sanders will miss a game sooner or later.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Let's get to the receivers because you had mentioned it at the top of the show. There was one of the guys that probably is near your favorites in terms of pre-Week 1 waiver wire pickups. Before we do so, a word from our sponsors here, Better Vision. I think we can all agree that fantasy sports is awesome. So daily fantasy and sports betting too. That's why we have so many accounts. What's not awesome, going to a bunch of different apps, find the best odds, and manage all your fantasy lineups. Enter Better Vision. That's Bettor Vision. Better Vision is the only app that syncs all your fantasy, DFS, and sportbook accounts in one place. They only show you the best odds for every bet, so you'll always get the best value. And on their dashboard, it's the only one-stop shop to track all of your fantasy matchups too. It's great. Visit bettervision.us or download the Better Vision app today. We have a lot of same tools and betting stuff on RotoWire, at least when you're going through the betting section things. But I have personally used the Better app here for that, and they really are fantastic when trying to find all the up-to-date odds and kind of accumulating. That they also do fantasy matchups is fantastic. So check out Better Vision again, either on their app or download. Go to bettervision.us.
I believe these guys did an elevator pitch at the FSGA.
Very convincing.
One of the last couple ones. They had a good product, and we were very excited to do business with these guys. So definitely go check that out. Organize all your stuff in one place. It's absolutely worth it.
We had mentioned it. One of the top waiver wire pickups is Marvin Mims, who's currently at 36% rostered. He got a little bit of fame post-draft because that was one of Matthew Berry's top guys, and I think then it just didn't get talked about for a month and a half.
Oh, shoot. Jinx it.
Well, no. Because only at 36% roster. Now we're back to that point where we should be mentioning Marvin Mims, especially after Jerry Jeudy injured his hamstring. I'm anticipating, much like Cooper Kupp, he's not playing. I think the Broncos and Rams have more to play for, and you're not risking your star receiver per se. Marvin Mims and Courtland Sutton's a really good receiving combo. And if you are like Jake and don't believe Courtland Sutton's going to be back to his normal form, it's the rookie with that 4.38 speed that might be most intriguing for deep ball throwing Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as Jeudy ends up at DNP on tomorrow's practice report, everyone's going to be flying to the waiver wire to get Mims on first come, first serve. Because, like I alluded to earlier, I don't quite see. Not that I've seen it personally, right? I'm not there watching Broncos practice. I'm getting this information like a little bit third party, but relayed. But it's multiple people. Yeah, I'm seeing that he's not quite the same. And again, that doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player by any means, but we shouldn't be the name value of Courtland Sutton is a lot higher than what the productivity will be this year.
That's fair.
We'll see if he can prove me wrong. But again, once you have Jeudy and Sutton, again, I'm taking the leap and making that assumption. Obviously, Tim Patrick is out for the year before it starts again. Feel for that guy here, and Jalen Virgil is on IR as well. So really, say Jeudy doesn't play week 1. Right now, they have Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and Brandon Johnson. Those are their 3 receivers. That is it. They kept 6 receivers, and they'll probably have to activate someone off the practice squad if Jeudy doesn't play. But I presume that will be more of a special teamer, right? And yes, they have 2 solid tight ends in Trautman and Dulcich. Maybe they'll run a lot of 2 tight end sets, but you got to have some 3 wide receiver sets, right? Marvin Mims will get on the field, and he could possibly make some kind of an impact. He's not a huge guy, so I don't know if I expect a lot of touchdown. 5'11", 185, 4.38 speed, though, is what the that was the big thing out of the combine that got people's attention. His speed there, because last year at Oklahoma, 54, 91 targets, 1,083 yards, 6 touchdowns. Definitely not eye-popping stats, but people loved his athleticism, and that's what rose him up draft boards here. And at only 36% rostered, I mentioned Deon Jackson being one of the top pickups this week. Like, if you need to start in week 1, which might be the case if you were a Jonathan Taylor drafter in July, like I was in a couple of places here. If you're just looking to improve your roster and make it the best it can be, and make sure there is no dead weight, and make sure you accidentally auto drafted a second kicker or a defense, or maybe you drafted someone that's on IR. You were holding out hope for one of these free agents to sign that didn't. Marvin Mims will make your roster better, I believe, and he has a role in Denver this year.
A Raheem Mostert, Sam Howell, Marvin Mims DFS week 1 lineup that cashes is not only like it wouldn't be surprising to me. I actually think it's going to happen. Like that trio of guys, and I know Mostert's not a pickup per se, but I'm believing that H-Chain won't play week 1. I think that's how severe the injury might be, and even if he does, he's limited. Like, all 3 of those guys are going to be really impactful. And again, in the case of Mims, rookie receivers tend to do a little bit better than tight ends or even running backs in that extent. And I think the offense will need Mims to be successful. He is my top waiver wire pickup. I'm prioritizing him over Deon Jackson in leagues that I need receivers. We had a user ask, do they trade Calvin Ridley and I think it was somebody else for Bijan Robinson? And my question was, well, does your receivers hurt? No was the answer. So yes, do the trade. But I think everyone's receivers are better if you could pick up Mims. Like if Mims is available, I'm making moves because I don't know once he gets in the starting lineup how he gets out. Like they might run more 3 receiver sets as the season progresses once Judy gets back healthy because Mims is that good. Like I am a Mario Puig and John McKechnie truther disciple. They do a lot of our college and rookie analysis work, and they have Mims ahead of Zay Flowers, who was getting drafted in the first round by the Ravens. Obviously, they had Mims above Jonathan Mingo, who was, I think, the first receiver selected in the second round, certainly ahead of Jaden Reed, who we'll talk about more, second round receiver for the Packers. Like, Mims is a really, really talented guy, and I have a hard time believing he's going to get played off the field in week 1. So he's our probably our top waiver wire guy overall. Then there's Van Jefferson, who will get more opportunities regardless, but probably gets even more if and when Cooper Kupp has been ruled out ahead of their week 1 matchup. I'm not convinced Van Jefferson's a thing, but you've always been a little bit better. And I get a bit of a Donovan Peoples-Jones vibe from Van Jefferson, which has always been your guy now for the past 3 years of podcasts is, hey, if you want 4 for 70, here, get Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's Van Jefferson, I think, potentially. So where are you at with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a last man standing situation here, right? I personally don't think if Kupp is out there seeing a specialist right now, I personally don't think he'll be ready for week 1. We'll see what happens. We'll see what his practice participation level is. But really, okay, so after Kupp, it's Jefferson atop the depth chart, followed by Tutu Atwell, Puka Nacua, and Ben Skowronek. Right?
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot going on here. They're at Seattle. They'll have to throw to some degree. Maybe Stafford has lost the chemistry of the team, but he has to throw to somebody, right? Somebody's got to get the ball here. And if you're getting 10, 12 targets in a week as one of the few guys that Stafford has actually been comfortable with in the past, Jefferson's a streamer. Now, the problem is here, at 19%. There's a lot of other guys under our 50% threshold that I believe will do better. And also, it's week 1. Your lineup has all year to get decimated by injuries and poor draft decisions and everything like that. How many people need a streamer that bad this week? So I'd be hard pressed to start Van Jefferson, but there are some scenarios in which maybe you loaded up your roster with Jonathan Taylor and Jameson Williams and Alvin Kamara, and you really need a flex or something like that. Then okay, he's out there, he's available. I don't know if he'll actually be a thing, but by process of elimination, man, he's the dude, and he has a decent matchup in a matchup where they'll probably have to score some points, and his quarterback's healthy, and they have at least felt some degree of chemistry in the past. So Van Jefferson, again, there are quarterbacks closer to our 50%, or receivers closer to our 50% threshold that I think have a better outlook this season. But for this show, at least for the most part, we're trying to zero in on guys whose circumstances have changed and are more likely to be available in your league.
Yeah, I'm just taking the under on Stafford's passing yards and noping out of the whole Rams situation sans Cooper Kupp. Like I other than Tyler Higbee, who we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit later. Maybe he actually passes our threshold. There's not an attractive name in my mind for that Rams pass catching group, and I want nothing to do with Van Jefferson. As TTV says, stop trying to make Van Jefferson a thing, Jake. This is not fetch. You're never going to make Van Jefferson a thing. So stop it.
I don't know. You get a streamer once or twice a couple of weeks here. Once Kupp's back, if Kupp's back, right. If Kupp's healthy, then he won't be a thing anymore. But until then, or they sign somebody else, he might be a thing.
We should do some quick hitters because I do want to spend some time on what the tight end situation looks like with this Travis Kelce news. Again, what we know right now is that he's uncertain for Thursday's game, that he had a hyperextended knee. We'll likely find out more. I don't even know if practice has ended yet for the Chiefs, but we'll find out more information when Andy Reid takes to the podium. That might be by the end of the show. We'll kind of find out. But we had mentioned the pass catching group for the Packers, and obviously Romeo Doubs, my guy, is already banged up with a hamstring injury, which we are having issue with Jerry Jeudy and Cooper Kupp. I can't just pretend like Doubs is going to be fine with that. So if Doubs doesn't play, Jaden Reed, who really was an intriguing guy, the second-round pick by the Packers, but looked even better during the preseason. Like, we love Luke Musgrave. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Jaden Reed was like toe for toe in terms of who looks good during the preseason, made some really difficult catches, was, I thought, outstanding in the middle of the field. Reminded me a lot of Randall Cobb although I feel like we've said that before with Amari Rodgers as well too. So where are you at with Jaden Reed, who is rostered in only 8% of Yahoo leagues?
Yeah, Jaden Reed's interesting because the skills are there. You know, a lot of people think that the Packers overdrafted him a little bit in the second round out of Michigan here, but the Packers, you know, in recent memory, Goody has drafted pretty good receivers. They've been decent at drafting receivers, I would say, for the most part, and finding value in receivers. And if this is a guy they had high on their board that they wanted to go get, I've got a little bit of confidence, and of course that's tied to Jordan Love. But really, the big thing why this is interesting is because our guy Romeo Doubs, who, by the way, if you're not picking up and starting Jaden Reed this week, Romeo Doubs at 31% is a better pickup. I think he's going to get more volume throughout the rest of the season. Reed's interesting because the circumstances have changed. Because you know we don't really know about Doubs, it's starting to get a little bit cryptic. But Reed, after Watson, who's the clear number one, I think Musgraves could be the number two. You know, we'll see there. But Reed is interesting. He's in the mix. Aaron Jones, of course, is going to get his passes here. But yeah, like I said, second round pick out of Michigan State, 4.45 40. We saw him used in end arounds during the preseason. You know, getting a couple of carries might be interesting there. And this running game, of course, is the priority in Green Bay. There's a good amount to like here for someone like Jaden Reed in your deepest leagues. And even, you know, maybe not getting a ton of love in some dynasty leagues too that you can go grab him in.
Yeah, I mentioned Terry McLaurin's injury. Just continue on, quick hit these receivers. Diami Brown, the speed threat, obviously, and the Commanders, again, have a great matchup against the Cardinals. Not rostered anywhere. Yep. I would sooner assume Jahan Dotson's just going to get funneled like 12 targets if McLaurin doesn't play, as opposed to Diami Brown being a factor. But obviously there's Curtis Samuel on there too, on the roster for the Commanders. Just a name to mention if McLaurin is unavailable for week one. Like there's gonna be a lot of these guys that we're monitoring come Wednesday. Just keep that name in the back of your mind.
Dotson might be the highest rostered receiver, percentage rostered receiver in DFS this weekend, just because of the circumstances. So again, you got to do some weird things to win $1 million in a GPP, right? Maybe this week's millionaire maker is a Sam Howell, Diami Brown, Logan Thomas stack.
God, just don't do the Logan. It's Marvin Mims. I already said it. You're throwing Marvin Mims or Raheem Mostert. There you go.
Exactly. But if you pick the receiver that nobody is suspecting, and I don't know, maybe Dotson takes a bad step, or maybe Diami, gets a couple of deep balls, you're putting yourself in a good spot for $1 million. So, just throwing that out.
Good point. I want to make sure we save some time for tight ends and defenses. Yeah. Jake, is there any of these other receivers you listed that you really want to mention or discuss further?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we just talked about Michael Gallup coming into this season, the healthiest he's ever been. He's only at 31% rostered. I definitely have some interest there. I'm not as interested in Rashee Rice at 46%, at least short term. I think he's someone that'll get dropped a lot after this week, and then we bring him up on the show later on this year. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 2-3 for the Bears, at 41%, not really interested there. Tyler Boyd, 46%. I think he needs an injury to really, really get going. And then you've got guys that are just straight up dart upside picks like Jalen Hyatt and Jonathan Mingo, who are 20% and 17% respectively. We really don't know what we're going to get out of those guys yet. So, speculative ads again if you're trying to make that last bench spot a little better.
If you are rostering Hyatt, you should be picking up Reed instead. Like they're like Jaden Reed needs to be rostered. He's going to have a factor more than I think Hyatt will. And this is just the New York people bias, whatever else, getting excited for their third round pick. That is somebody that's just running straight, and you're hoping in best ball formats you're making a play. I'm not convinced that you're going to have a situation where Jalen Hyatt is any more valuable than like 70 other guys at the moment. So that should not be at 20%, but people will figure it out, much like myself probably will after all my Rashee Rice shares go to the absolute stinker by Friday morning. So cool. I'm glad we went through those guys. Tight end is really interesting besides the Travis Kelce news because there is that Luke Musgrave factor we've been teasing quite a bit. Before we get there, though, let's talk about Vivid Seats for a second. Football is back. Kick off the NFL season with Vivid Seats and score tickets to all the hottest matchups and biggest games of the year. Catch every pass, every tackle, every heart-pounding play of your favorite team live and in person. And with Vivid Seat Rewards, now you earn rewards with every single purchase. Each ticket you buy gets you closer to your reward. Just buy 10 tickets, then simply cash in your credit towards your 11th ticket purchase. It's that easy. Plus, Vivid Tickets is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with code RotoWire. That's code ROTOWIRE. From the 50-yard line to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2023 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. All right, let's talk about those tight ends again. Luke Musgrave has been near the top of our list. He is at 15% rostered, which you said over under like 11. I think I would have said under on Luke Musgrave. So clearly people have been listening to our show over the past 2 or 3 weeks because we are the only ones, Jake, wink, wink, that are promoting Luke Musgrave. Nobody else in the fantasy platform is out there.
If you're thinking about going and grabbing Noah Gray this week, we don't know what the heck is going to happen with this Chiefs. There's no plug-and-play option for Kelce. It's not a one-for-one situation here. Noah Gray could grab a touchdown just as likely as Blake Bell, just as likely as one of these other receivers. I would actually do yourself a favor if you need a Kelce replacement, because chances are you didn't draft a backup tight end. If you use first-round draft capital on Kelce, I'd actually be going to Luke Musgraves here. I like him. I mean, there are some tight ends that are under our 50% roster spot, but I think this is the absolute cheapest you're going to be able to get Musgraves, especially after this week with Dobbs potentially out. It could be such a big volume week, and I think he's going to surprise some people.
Yeah, I'm with you wholeheartedly. If Dobbs is not playing, I don't think Christian Watson is getting any more than 7 or 8 targets, and that's a max. And I understand people think, okay, great, well, he's really explosive. That's fine. They might utilize him some jet sweep ways too. I don't know how often the Packers offense is really passing. Like the over-under for Jordan Love pass attempts probably is set at 32 or 34. And I don't know.
On that.
Yeah, that's exactly
I bet you it's
my
closer
point.
to like 27.5.
Yeah, so I think Musgrave is going to be the second target of that offense. And if you are hurting for tight end, that would be one of the names out there. And I agree with you, pick him up over Noah Gray, who at the moment looks like the tight end to roster if you don't have Travis Kelce. They have Blake Bell, who's always been just a blocking specialist for the Chiefs on the roster. That's the only other tight end, though. I would imagine they pick up somebody. I can't think of somebody that would change how the Chiefs offense operates in 2 days, though, right? Like that's the big part of it for me. So, and TTV asks in the chat, Tucker Kraft and his routes hurting Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft is going to be more of a 3-down tight end, and I think the Packers operate with 2 tight ends a lot. He's probably the better blocker of the group. I think Musgrave is a lot like Robert Tonyan, who is the seam stretcher, gets to the middle of the field, and especially if you're saying Watson's going to be a speed threat on one side, it's going to be Musgrave, I think, on the other. I like him for every angle for that. For 50% rostered, he needs to be way, way higher if that's the case. So,
yep, I'm definitely with you there.
Okay, there's been news on Greg Dulcich as well, and that Adam Troutman has been getting way more snaps and opportunities. If you recall, Adam Troutman was on the Saints when Sean Payton was there. Now reacquired him, brought him over from New Orleans over to Denver. I'm not sure I'm buying the Adam Troutman thing, and I'm also not sure I'm comfortable with Greg Dulcich either. I wasn't really interested in him a lot last year, and he was on our show often as a name to pick up. So are you looking at the Broncos tight end scenario just saying I'm out altogether, or are you interested in one or the other?
Yeah, I'd be more of a wait-and-see situation for me. I just don't normally I loved Dulcich last year, right? And I even thought about keeping him really early on in the league area, and that's definitely faded here. You got a new coach, you got a new scheme. Dulcich was one of the last men standing there with all these injured Broncos wide receivers. They didn't really have any other tight ends. I think he's going to have to really claw with Troutman to get some of those to get some of those reps.
Flip side is the Saints with Deon Jackson. We mentioned a little bit with the Saints and Taysom Hill not being listed as a tight end. Super touchdown dependent, only 38% rostered. That was a guy that I was drafting a little bit more in best ball formats. I'm not sure in redraft. Although I think I listed on Twitter 7 shares of Sam Laporta. If you're rolling the dice like me on Sam Laporta, it's not that much of a stretch to say, hey, can Juwan Johnson score once? Because it's the same kind of concept. I would like Luke Musgrave more than Juwan Johnson at this stage. Maybe it's a bit of Packers hysteria and hype for me, but that's where I'm at with what I think Musgrave can be for this offense.
There's also just a path to a much more consistent role, right, with Musgrave, and where a guy like Juwan Johnson, we're talking about touchdown dependent options, right?
Yep.
He's not someone that's going to get you consistent points. He's not someone they're going to use to move the chains, at least until Michael Thomas gets hurt or what have you here. But if you need a gamble of a touchdown dependent option, Juwan Johnson at 38% is there. Dawson Knox is only 22%. He's at the Giants. And I probably like both of those guys a little bit more than Noah Gray, because I do not think Noah Gray is a plug-and-play option.
I don't really care about Dawson Knox, but again, I just don't think Noah Gray is also an easy fill-in with the information that we currently have available to us post this Travis Kelce news and his injury status. Just real quick, we've mentioned Irv Smith, and we've talked about quite
Yes.
a bit. I picked him up last night. I
Mhm.
had been sniped on Jake Ferguson 2 picks before on my must-have backup tight end spot because my friends and family league requires you must draft 2 tight ends. Irv Smith was the shrug your shoulders, totally fine. There were times where Hayden Hurst was a fantasy starting tight end multiple weeks. Irv Smith, I think, is a better player, certainly a more explosive guy after the catch, and blocks better. So I think Irv Smith is going to be a factor this season.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think that he is someone that you could very easily pick up for this week. Among these other guys. So Jake Ferguson, who you mentioned, was 32%. I love him as much as the next Wisconsin Badger alumni does here. There's probably a fact about him that'll get stated on the broadcast a ton of times week 1. But overall, there's a lot of competition, and they used a lot of draft capital on that position of late. So I don't think necessarily that Ferguson's a shoo-in to get all of the pass-catching tight end reps in Dallas. I'm also a little bit worried about Michael Mayer, who is 18%. Rookie tight ends. Who the heck knows? Again, you take that challenge with Musgrave, but Musgrave you at least see running the routes and see getting targeted here in the preseason. Maybe that's a little bit less with Mayer. So, if you're not going any of those TD-dependent options, you take a shot at Irv Smith too. So I think we gave quite a few Kelce backup options here, right? Should we try to put our heads together and rank them?
Well, I was going to say Austin Hooper is blocking Michael Mayer, so it's not a one-for-one obvious one.
Yep.
You have Luke Schoonmaker, who is the draft pick that you referenced with the Cowboys.
And Peyton Henderson shots around too.
Dak Prescott said Jake Ferguson could be a star, and I think that's where people kind of base this assumption off of. I think he's like Owen Daniels, if you remember him from the Texans, which is not bad. That's great.
Tight end 8 to 10 for 5 years.
But it's the same concept of what we just had with Dalton Schultz. Like all right, great. I have Dalton
Daniels
Schultz
maybe a little bit better blocker, and Ferguson's a little faster. But
it's like a better version of it. So if I'm ranking your Travis Kelce fill-ins that are probably widely available, and there's been lots in the chat like Noah Fant and other things like that. Musgrave is my number 1, Jake. I think I'm taking Musgrave over Jake Ferguson, who's my number 2. And then I'm kind of rolling the dice on a Juwan Johnson type of guy, maybe even Irv Smith as my number 3, who can confidently get 3 or 4 catches for 40 yards, or Juwan Johnson gets a touchdown. Yeah. But you're really rolling the dice.
Yeah, I'm rolling Musgraves, Juwan Johnson, Irv Smith. Those are the first 3 names I'm looking at, and all are very gettable here. So there are some Kelce options. Not all is lost.
So everyone over Noah Gray is kind of what we're getting at right now.
Yeah. I mean, he could probably crack the top 8 in streamers, if we talk about this. But I mean, I don't think Noah Gray is all that different than Dawson Knox, to be honest. I think people overhype Dalton Kincaid a little bit.
Yeah, the concept with Kincaid is that he could be the slot receiver, but we have to wait and see if he actually is the slot receiver, and if the Bills, if that's just talk, or if there's something real to using.
I think they have too many actual wide receivers on that team to make that a thing.
Very, very fair. Absolutely very fair. We have like a minute here, Jake, on defenses. If you haven't picked up the Commanders, that's the obvious go-to one. But if you're drafting, you're looking, hey, who's playing the Cardinals week 1? There you go. For those sickos like me who like looking at week 2 defenses, Giants, they play the Cardinals in week 2. I have the Giants rostered in a few places. I know that you don't approve of that, Jake, but I will have 2 defenses from time to time.
Yeah, from time to time. I mean, of course, you want the Commanders here. The number 1 stream pick, though, by both Jerry, who writes our streaming defense articles on RotoWire, and Kevin Payne, who writes our waiver wire thing. I'll give you a peek behind the paywall here. The number 1 streaming pick is the Falcons, actually. They're home, and they have Carolina. So, you're getting a rookie quarterback on an offense we don't think is very good, with a lead running back that's very well could be banged up, in a decimated receiving core. Maybe not decimated. I'm just not all that impressed with it. But the Falcons are one. Other ones that are mentioned, long shots. Vikings, they're home against Tampa Bay. Seahawks, they're home against the Rams, who are possibly without Cooper Kupp. And the Jags, of course, they're 27%. They're at Indianapolis. So I think I went against Jerry's column. I put the Seahawks above the Jags a little bit just because they're home. But that is all.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's pretty thorough. We had a top 5 player breaking news injury. We had your computer forcing your restart. We had lots of Luke Musgrave conversation overall. This was an all-encompassing podcast, Jake. We did it all for pre-week 1.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be nice to our commenters, what about Dalton Schultz? Of course, he ranks above all of those guys that we talked about because he is largely drafted. He was over our 50% threshold by a good amount. Wasn't necessarily that's the reason why we didn't talk about him, not because we don't think that he'd be fine. And then Noah Fant as a Kelce pivot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm taking Musgrave over Fant.
Yeah, all those guys that we discussed, they're probably above Fant here. I've painstakingly owned Fant in our dynasty league, and there's just thinking he was he was Kyle Pitts before Kyle Pitts, right? Your super athletic pass catching tight end, right? And then he just fizzled out big time here. I'm hoping Pitts doesn't go down that same path.
This is great. Can you always be known as the dude with the beard, Jake? That's what Matt is saying. He's calling you out on your Bills slot receiver lack of knowledge, even though they absolutely do have Deontay Hardy, who they signed as a slot receiver, and Khalil Shakir, who has to be utilized in that same way. But if they do end up having Dalton Kincaid as the slot receiver, it's meant to be to help the running game, to have a big-bodied guy that can make the running backs look good. That's been an issue for the Bills now for the past 2 years of Sean McDermott's tenure, and I think that's the issue or that they're trying to correct by having Dalton Kincaid as the slot receiver. They do have some, but guy with beard, Jake, you are wrong that you're ignoring totally that Kincaid could be the slot receiver. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I guess looking at it again, there's not a ton of depth after Diggs and Davis, so I could see a scenario where that works, but also I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I like Shakir, and not just the musician. I also clear Shakir, the player for the Bills, but we'll have to see. I've been in on Kincaid, and I think I'm like the only one at the office here at RotoWire that's been supporting it. But rookie tight ends, I understand why everyone's a little bit concerned. So, all right,
I don't love rolling with Kincaid. Sorry, I was going to wrap it up. I don't love rolling with Kincaid week 1 until we get a picture. Can you roster him? Sure, but starting them could put you in a bad position. That's all.
You can't talk me off the Sam Laporta train. I'm all on board for Thursday and hoping that Laporta goes nuts. He is my most rostered player, along with Elijah Mitchell. So
I never left that. The only thing that really brought me off that train was Luke Musgrave starting to be a thing.
Yes, you got eyes for another rookie tight end. I totally understand. That's okay. All right, that does it for us on Tuesday's edition of RotoWire NFL Podcast. Obviously, a little bit shorter, I would assume, when there's not breaking news in terms of top 5 overall players that are injured. But future weeks, we're here every Tuesday around the same time, getting you set for all of your waiver wire questions and concerns. So thanks, everyone, for listening.